House members.
You did? It's getting tough in here.
Should I pass the candy run?
No.
Sorry.
Okay, S94 has come back to us. When it left here, it was the Barry TIF extension. It has come back well decorated, and Becky, you can walk us through most, all, whatever, but we just need to know what it is.
Do we have it online?
Let me check.
It is posted somewhere. So I did draft a portion of this bill. David Hall drafted a
David, I
portion.
think, is coming.
Okay, I can sort of speak to his sections until he gets here, if that is helpful.
We're looking at draft 7.1. Is that the latest?
The House proposal of amendment is posted under my name.
Yeah.
So that is incorporating all the changes.
Okay, so that would be 7.1. I've got 1.1. No, because that's 5.4.
It's the last,
Refresh, because I just.
I need to read.
that's right. There was an amendment on the floor, so this is incorporating all the changes.
See what I've got there. Still,
Looks like it's the last link on
I've
the
got, let's see what the last. 5/4/23.
It's the one underneath that.
Okay, that's what I don't have, so I'll have to go back out. Go back in and see. Yes, now I have 4. Okay, House proposal. So walk us through this. You, unless they change the Barry TIF, you can skip that, and you can skip the Hartford TIF.
Okay.
Because that's what we, well, no.
I'm
we have
sorry, I
those
lost.
two
What-
separate bills.
What am I looking for?
So under my name on the webpage, it's S94 House Proposal of Amendment.
And she's way down on the list.
Oh, here it is.
It's the 4th one down.
I've only got 3.
Okay, then you need to go out and come back in. That's what I just had to do. Okay, let's start, Becky.
Becky Wasserman, Legislative Council. So this is the House Proposal of Amendment S94, which as it came out of your committee was an act relating to the city of Barry's tax increment financing district, and there will be a new name added at the end of this amendment. So this is a strike all amendment, and it is broken up into sections that deal with VEPC and then TIPS. And David is here, so I don't know if you want to jump in and talk about the VEPC.
Yes.
What is your schedule?
What am I talking about? I'm sorry?
S94,
Great.
what's your schedule like?
My schedule is wide open and I'm happy to help whenever and however I can.
Okay, so you're doing section 1?
Actually, David's sections are the first 4 sections.
Okay,
that
so
are
let's
listed.
put David on that. All right, that makes sense.
No worries. Glad to be here. Is this document on your committee page?
Yes.
Great. David Hall, Legislative Council, for your record. So we're looking at 94, not 471, is that right?
S94, yeah, we've got House proposal of amendment.
Fantastic. Give me 30 seconds. All right, so the first pieces that I worked on, so I staff the Vermont Employment Growth Incentive Program, and that obviously is overseen by, administered by the VEPC. And so the first few pieces that came out of the House, some of them relate to VEPC's operation, and then some of the changes are for the VEGgie program itself. So section 1 is the former. This is This is VEPC itself. And we're in 32 VSA section 3325. So remember that a few years ago, you sort of recodified, restructured VEPC and VEGI in the Title 32, Chapter 105, all new stuff. Try to explain the operation of it. Those first couple of sections, that first subchapter relate to the council itself. Not changing the composition of the board, but on page 2, you'll see lines 13 through 15. The concern that this new subdivision 3 is responding to is the not timely replacement of members. And this says that the council shall provide not less than 30 days notice of a vacancy to the relevant appointing authority, which shall appoint a replacement not later than 30 days after receiving notice. My testimony to this point, all the committees have heard this, is, well, what happens if they don't? And the answer is, I don't know. Nothing, I guess, is the answer. At worst, in some universe, sure, you could have like a writ of mandamus that tell the appointing authority, hey, you need to do your job, we're going to legally compel you to do this. Probably not going to happen. But the point here, obviously, is so much of these provisions is signaling. Just to say, as a function of statute to the world, we really want you to keep this board fully staffed up and fully populated. The next piece in subsection E, operation, moving on to page 3 here. In subdivision 4, this is new, obviously, the council shall adopt and make publicly available policy governing conflicts of interest that meet or exceed the requirements of the state code of ethics, and shall include A, clear standards for when a council may participate or must be recused, or where there's an actual perceived conflict of interest, and B, a provision that requires a witness who is an officer of the state or its political subdivision or instrumentality to disclose the conflict of interest related to the application. So VEPC is covered by the state code of ethics. Their testimony was that they felt like, this is adequately addressed, but again, as a function of signaling, as a legal requirement for clarity in statute, this says, make sure you have a policy, make sure it's clear what a conflict is, when it arises, and whether or not a member should be recused. There obviously could be times when, for instance, non-voting RDC members participate in the conversation about potential incentives because they are invited if the project occurs in their service area. This would extend to them and say, let us know, for instance, if you own the building where this applicant is going to be involved, just for everybody to have the same information about what their respective interests are. So 5, this relates to executive session, and it says that notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, council shall not enter an executive session to discuss applications or other matters pertaining to VEGI unless the executive branch state economist is present and has been provided all relevant materials concerning the session. Question.
So I have a list, I think I forwarded to you, of just some concerns. I also serve on VEPC, so I'll just disclose that. So must be present. That just seems like it could be logistically problematic. One thing I would like to propose to the committee, must be invited, but I'm just worried that if the auditor is an interest and just schedules don't align, the must be present, the absolute nature of this can be very logistically problematic. But if they're always ensured to be invited,
I think they want to have that person present, though, in terms of their expertise, because they have certain review responsibilities regarding VEPC.
Yeah, provide a lot of things in written testimony. So just if their schedules don't allow them to be.
I don't know why we need the state economists. We don't pay any attention to them.
Okay, I've got this red flag. I've already told the other body I didn't think we were going to be able to do this because we don't have time. If it's as simple as you have to appoint someone in 60 days, maybe we will. So this executive session, what does it mean about present and invited?
So I'd be satisfied if you say the state economist or their designee
Invited.
to provide. I don't know about invited. I think they probably want somebody present. Really do.
So we meet once a month and we line up lots of witnesses and it's an important decision. And so if,
And that's not been in existence in the past. That's not past language, is it?
This is new, but I respect your debate. I think it's important to look at this in the context of the next section as well,
Okay.
because the next pieces would impose new duties on the executive economist, which would probably necessitate their presence.
Okay.
So if you see on page 4 here, now we're talking about the cost benefit model. And remember that this is the black box where we put in all the inputs, it spits out all the outputs, and what the net fiscal benefit to the state is, et cetera.
And the state economist is now overseeing, supervising, doing, I'm not sure, but it was a state employee who was retired. There was some conflict about one of the readings, which is the but-for box. And so the executive branch, not the legislative branch, the economist, I believe, is now in charge of this.
Well, I mean, Tom Cabot, correct? So we're talking about-
No,
Who's that?
no, Jeff Carr.
Okay.
So, as of right now, I don't know the answer to who is administering the model and running the analysis, but I know historically the concern, at least for the House side, was that it was being performed internally at some point because that is a significant cost savings, obviously over having to pay executive state economists who, like the legislative economists, bills by the hour.
Yeah.
And so, C1 here requires the executive branch economist to perform the cost benefit analysis under the program. 2 requires that economist to consult with JFO or its agent, which really means Tom Cabot, concerning the performance of the cost benefit analysis and the operation of the model. And that's in 2 circumstances. If the value of potential incentives an applicant could earn equals or exceeds $1 million, or if it qualifies for an enhanced incentive because it's in a qualifying labor market area.
And it was an enhanced incentive that set off alarm bells last summer.
So again, reading these pieces together, if this were to pass, executive branch economist has to perform the analysis and operate the model. That has all the inputs and the proprietary information that may be considered in an executive session. So hence you have the addition of 5 above, which says, we don't want you meeting an executive session unless the person who did the work is there and they have all the materials.
Assume remotely works.
I think so.
that's not to drag things out, but I just hope that we can hear from Betsy about this.
I don't shut out people.
Right.
I just may not get this out this year.
Fair enough.
Okay. I just wanted to see how controversial all of this was. All right.
Okay, so that's, unless you have further questions about these 2 pieces. Okay, so we can switch now gears to the program itself, page 5 of 27. We're down in the reporting section. And this basically expands the scope and the detail of the data that would be publicly reported pursuant to section 3340. So that's an annual reporting requirement. It flows to VEPSI and to tax, remember, because VEPSI does the front end analysis and approval of an application, but then tax does the confirmation that you achieved your targets and that you're entitled to your payment. So here under B2, for each business that has an approved application, so that's the front end, we already have date, an amount, years, authorizations, active, expiration. E will require them to report the number of new qualifying jobs anticipated to be created and the anticipated gross wages and salaries for each new qualifying job in a defined term, sorted by these wage bands below 38,380 all the way up to in excess of 100. F, the amount of new full-time payroll anticipated to be created, and the next code. 3, now This is supposed to mirror basically that same information, but on the back end. So it's for each approved claim, all that same data, same wage bands, for each approved claim, amount, new payroll, capital investment. So C2 is important to read, notwithstanding provision in the section to the contrary, reporting data information pursuant to the section, council department takes steps necessary to avoid disclosing information that would enable the identification of an employee as an individual employee or the employee's compensation. This is to respond to those rare circumstances where the small number of
I'm gonna hire 3 people and they're all gonna make $100,000, and that's on the website, okay?
So we don't want to identify individuals in those circumstances. The last piece is in section 3341, confidentiality of proprietary business information. There's a 1-word addition at the bottom of page 7, line 21. Information materials submitted by a business concerning its application, income taxes, and other information is not subject to public disclosure. I will say, I think it's important to note that this section used to have more by way of information sharing, and particularly to JFO or the committee's jurisdiction, to the auditor. The public discussion was whether or not, pursuant to existing language, the Joint Fiscal Committee could issue a standing request that JFO automatically receive access to these documents, including application. And my office is of the opinion that JFC could issue such a request. And so whether you choose to do so is up to you, but that may be something to keep an eye on going forward. There's the extension by 1 year of the program, but other than that, that's it for the veggie pieces.
Okay.
All right.
Questions at this point?
I also staffed the economic development incentive study, but that comes up later after TIF, so I'm happy to yield the seat until you get back to it.
Brock, you have a question?
Just a question, the authority to the audit of accounts, I would assume, would extend to contract auditors employed by the auditor of accounts?
I'm reluctant to say an automatic yes. I'm not familiar enough with the auditor statute to know the answer to that. I mean, I presume if they had it as part of their subcontract agreement, so the auditing services could be performed under the auspices of the auditor's offices, and they said,
You've got the auditing agreement, you mean with Pepsi or?
no, I mean, if the auditor hired someone else to perform services, I assume in that agreement, they would say, you're subject to the same.
The same requirements of
Right.
confidentiality, but I'm just wondering, is this permitted under this contract, the way it reads?
Mhm.
For the auditor to make such a contract? I mean, it would seem to be important because the financial audit that the auditor's office does is done with an outside auditing, by an outside auditing firm. And so I would think that they would have to have access to this information if it was part of the audit of the state records.
Sure, I'm inclined to say yes, but I would like to review the auditor statute before I.
We'll just flag that if you would know that.
Senator Chip.
On page 5, line 9, under the Joint Fiscal Committee, the new additional information about the number of new qualifying jobs anticipated that would be part of the joint report, would that be by default being in the joint report public information that the market would then be able to see how many jobs and in what pay ranges they're anticipating to grow to possibly earn the incentive?
Yes, this report is public report.
Like, flag that too, because that could be concerning to have to, these companies that are looking to possibly grow, if they have to disclose publicly outside of protected area what jobs and how much they're planning to grow in this area.
I think, don't they have to do that now? They have to do a report to the Joint Fiscal Committee.
lot of it, I think, is protected and confidential. My concern.
Yeah, I don't think the joint fiscal committee it's done in public session, so I don't think they I'm on it, get anything that's confidential.
So I think it's maybe when it's earned, it's definitely disclosed, but this is at the
Okay,
prospect stage.
well, David, can you check on that?
I can, I mean, the underlying, obviously, the underlying represents new information that would be additional to what they receive right now, and I'm not sure where they draw the line as far as aggregated data and say.
I know the issue was there was a number of new jobs that they were getting an enhanced benefit for because it would happen more quickly. And the owner had announced in the paper that that was his intention. So joint fiscal, and I'm looking, but I think joint fiscal gets the number of anticipated jobs. We don't. What do we get?
In the annual report you get, as far as like if the joint fiscal committee reviews, such as the one that you
Right.
saw last year, it goes to the joint fiscal office, it doesn't go to the joint fiscal committee.
Committee.
Um,
Okay, so maybe they do.
Get jobs info in the annual report, it's all applications together, it's a total.
It's not,
number of
okay.
jobs. It's not.
So this would be an individual, all right.
So you'll see on page 6 there, we're striking the word aggregate, and we're gonna break that down for each approved claim. So this will take us one level more granular and say for each business,
Okay,
jobs, payroll, investments by wage band.
okay. So we'll flag that one too. Reporting next section 3. Okay. Okay. Okay, then we're back to tips.
Back to tips.
Becky Wasserman, Legislative Council. The tip part of the bill starts on section 5. There are, as the chair mentioned, there are 2 tip sections in here that this committee has seen this year, and those are the extensions for Barry and Hartford. The other tip sections, this committee has seen a couple times, not this year, but in previous years. So it may be familiar to some of you. So these are changes that I think range from technical to substantive and that have come up over the years. Some in response to auditors' reports. And I think, I'm trying to remember now, I think it's been in a few different bills over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yes, because we did them, I was set to, we did a lot of changes that came out of the St. Albans auditor report. It was due on March 13th, the day we got sent home for COVID. I was prepared to present. The next year, I think we agreed to support many TIFs and got them stuck on one of the economic development bills. And I don't think most of them made it all the way through. But I'm looking at this first one, and it is allowing the cost of debt service for a period of time, and I know that was one of them.
Right, so in section 5, this is making some changes to a couple of the amendments in the TIF district statute. So one of those is the definition of improvement.
Where are you?
So if you go to the top of page 9, there is line 4, there's a change to the definition of improvement. And that this change is getting at allowing for funding of debt service interest payments for a period of up to 2 years, beginning on the date on which the first debt is incurred. And this is addressing the issue of whether or not you could use the proceeds of debt to pay for that debt service payment for a period of time.
There being, the intent of the program is you will pay that debt service with the increased revenue you get from the construction improvements. The municipality is generally putting in water, sewer, street lights. They don't get any revenue back for a number of years until the improvements are built and actually paying taxes. But they owe debt service on.
And that was one of the findings of the St. Albans audit that criticized the city for taking the payments out, taking the money out before they actually built anything, but it was an impossibility to do.
Right.
Under the statute of
And it
limitations.
is standard procedure for towns on all other kinds of debt. And it's, no one ever thought that it wouldn't be allowed on this
But technically, but this corrects that.
Right, so this version does allow for it, but only for a period of 2 years.
one. And what happened? Oh, yes, okay.
I think
Not a sunset, you can only pay.
for a 2-year period, right? And then there's another change in the definition of financing, which is in subdivision 7. So you'll see at the bottom of page 9. This is addressing whether bond anticipation notes may be used. So this is allowing the use of bond anticipation notes as a method of financing, and says that it is not considered the first incurrence of debt for the municipality for that TIF district.
Okay.
So it doesn't start the clock running for incurring debt.
And we have also put this before.
And then the next change is adding a new definition for an active district. And the reason for this change is trying to allow for the fact that districts are approved over time, and some dissolve, some retire their debt. And the statute right now has a list of districts that have been approved. And so the statute is not able to sort of keep up with the changes that are, the approvals that are actually happening. You would have to amend statute each time a district is approved. So it's trying to address this by, instead of listing the approved districts in statute, just referring to a number of active districts that have been approved. So it's adding this definition here, and you'll see where that is applied in the next section, which is section 6, which has that, currently has a list of all the municipalities that are authorized to use education tax increment financing for a TIF district. So this is proposing to strike out that list of municipalities and instead have a cap of not more than 14 active districts in the state at any time.
And active districts are the ones that are presently doing improvements.
They've been, so active means that they have been approved and created, but they have not been terminated or retired their debt.
Okay. They're approved, but they haven't terminated. So that could keep them active for 10, I mean, if that lasts, you take out a 20-year bond, this is going to keep them active for close to 20, if they take out that last bond close to when they finish the improvements, that takes them active, but they, after 20 years, they make the full payment to the ed fund. So they could still be listed as active because they're still paying off the debt. But what is the state care? They're paying the full rate to the ed fund. I'm just,
So I'll pull up the statute. I believe it says that they, when the district retires the debt is when the district is terminated. I'll just pull up that.
okay, so it's where they have to retire the debt.
We usually do that to retire their debt, so they would become inactive as soon as they make the last payment.
Winooski's an outlier. It didn't come under the general state statute. They were Winooski, Milton, and Bill.
So the statute says the district shall continue until the date and hour the indebtedness is retired, or if no debt is incurred 5 years following the creation of the district.
Okay. So, all right. Okay. So we aren't changing anything.
So there is a change here that is more obvious in another section, but that current law says that there's no more than 6 districts that can be approved. So this 14 active does change that calculation.
Yeah, but that's be interesting to look at because the interest, well, one of the interests is to protect the ed fund. That's why you put a cap on it. So I'm waiting to see if it says somewhere there can't be, a cap, just a cap of 14 means you could have 14 that aren't paying into the ed fund, which is a major increase. But since we've got so many out there right now who won't, and I guess maybe Betsy could help us at some point understand how many are out there that are still paying off their debt. I'm trying to figure out what we're doing to the number of actively doing their projects and not paying their full amount into the ed fund. Because in theory, you could have 14 doing that. In actual fact, if you've got 10 who haven't hit their debt payout limit, then we're actually limiting the number of actual.
Yeah, and I can let Betsy
Yeah.
speak to
Okay.
the calculation of how many
Yeah,
are approved versus retire their debt. I will say that I think this, as opposed to the current situation, which has a limit on how many can be approved, this contemplates a situation where if a district that is currently active retires their debt, and then that means that there's an additional, that means there's only 13 in the state that are active. It could allow for one more to be approved to have to hit that 14 maximum. So I think it contemplates a situation where it's more of like a rolling maximum of 14 rather than, no more approvals.
yeah, but there's 11 right now. And everybody's on there. Milton, North and South are still on there. Burlington will be on there forever. Yeah, all of them that have ever been done are still on this list.
Yeah, so it looks like Montpelier has become inactive and dissolved.
Montpelier gave theirs up.
Right, in Colchester, and then the Milton North-South became inactive.
Okay, so this limits, we'll get more testimony on what the actual impact is. I'm highly suspicious it's a way of limiting the number of tips that can be authorized.
Presumably there's some other, there are other tips that aren't on the list here, crossouts.
Yeah, so the statute is not accurate.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
This is what's in statute right
Yeah.
now, and they're
Yeah.
taking this whole list out and just saying there won't be more than 14 active.
In
They're
part
trying to
because
figure that out.
Because it's a changing list, so having it in statute is challenging because you have to update it.
That is just important for us, just to understand how many tips are there that are active and how many are sort of in progress and haven't been in fact activated yet.
Yes.
If there is such a,
Well, someone knows.
Betsy does.
Okay,
So a
so
flag on this one.
section 7 of the bill is dealing with a situation of whether the boundaries of a district can be changed after the TIF financing plan has been approved. So at the top of page 12, it says that no adjustments can be made to the physical boundary lines of a district after that approval has been received for the TIF district plan.
And I think we did do this.
Yes, this was an issue that this committee has discussed before.
Because I remember the discussion with the guy that bought the house next door, and his house was in the TIF district. But then there was South Burlington that had a plan to keep massively expanding, and the word was no. Okay.
Section 8 of the bill is addressing how to handle decrement in a TIF district. So this is a situation where the assessed value of the property in the district decreases as compared to the original taxable value. So the statute sort of contemplates that the value will always be increasing in a TIF district, but there can be a situation where it decreases. And so this is saying that regardless of whether it has decreased, the municipality still has to send to the ed fund not less than the aggregate tax due on that original taxable value, not the assessed value.
Okay, so we did if the building burns down, you still had to pay at the original value. This just says if you do your valuation this year and next year the market crashes and you can't give away something in your TIF district, the original value that you're going to have to exceed or improve upon is what it was. Okay.
Right, so the original taxable value is the value that the property's assessed at the creation of the district. So, for example, if you demolish property and
Leave a big hole.
that's one example, then you are going to send to the ed fund that original value, not the value it is for the whole account.
But that was one building. When we did this, there's background growth and the thought that generally property appreciates, but generally these are downtown. And so you didn't get credit for what would have been normal increase in value in the surrounding area, but we never anticipated that the value in the surrounding area might decline. And it could be because of damage, it could be because people started working remotely and office space wasn't as valuable as it was 2-3 years ago. It could be that something got overbooked, but this says we have a chairs meeting at 4:30. Okay, we're gonna have Can you drop Ashley a line and see if we've got a chairs meeting at 4:30? We're gonna have to move through this.
So the next section, section 9, is clarifying, you go to page 14, it is clarifying here that if a municipality with a TIF district and a tax stabilization agreement, if both of those exist for the same property in that municipality, that the tax increment for the properties in the TIF district have to be calculated based on the assessed value of the properties and not the stabilized value. Okay.
I hear we should hear from the town of Barry, because this has direct implications on their tip. That's what somebody has flagged for me.
Oh,
Of all the tips, Barry stands to, this language could be problematic for their existing tips, is what somebody was like. I don't quite understand why. I'd love more testimony. on it.
okay, well, I think we're not doing this week. I was hoping it was really simple. In each year, municipality shall remit not less than the aggregate tax due on the original tax value. And if that's within the TIF district, or
That
is,
has to do with the decrement issue. So the stabilization agreement issue is in section 9.
okay, no, I was trying to figure out, is that the town, you know, if you calculated it this year, and the town as a whole, not the TIF district, does that mean the town as a whole has to send the same amount to the ed fund as it did prior to the, it's possible that the real estate values in the town we've seen that, we couldn't give a condo in Florida away less than a decade ago. You know, I was being told I could buy a $500,000 condo for $25,000. Yeah. They drop. If it's just in the TIF district, that's one thing. If it's the town as a whole, that's.
This is speaking to the TIF,
Okay.
the original taxable value that is set for the properties in the TIF district.
Okay. And the tax stabilization, we've done that at least 3 times.
That's
And
correct.
it says you can, and it basically says you can forgive the town's taxes, but not the school's taxes, right?
I actually don't know much about what is part of a stabilization agreement, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay. Because I know unless they've changed something, if you want to do a tax stable, because before Act 60, Montpelier always, tax stabilization, you've got 1/3 of your taxes forgiven for X number of years, but 1/3 is the percentage of your tax bill that went to the city, 2/3 was the school tax. But we never forgave the school tax in a tax stabilization. And I thought that's what this was saying, is now that the school tax is a state tax, if you're gonna do any tax stabilization, the town is gonna say, you know, we're forgiving the school tax, the town is still liable to pay that tax to the
To
ed
the
fund.
ed fund, if there's a TIF district in that same area.
Or I mean, you're doing a tax stabilization to get a business not in a TIF area. You
Well,
know,
this particular language is speaking to a situation
Okay.
where a municipality has both a tax stabilization agreement and a TIF district. And so they're saying for the TIF district, you're calculating the education property tax based on the assessed values of the property
okay,
in the district and not, in the municipality's grand list and not on the stabilized value.
that's what we've done 3 times.
And then the next change.
So the House sent these to us and they've been voted out, which means if we do these this year, we have a good chance of getting them through. Okay,
The next change in this section is addressing that issue of the 14 max active district and striking out the language, so on page 15, that says the council shall not approve more than 6 districts in the state with not more than 2 per county. So this is changing that to say that the council can't approve more than the 14 active districts and not more than 2 per county. And then one change that is in here that has never been in this language in any form in this committee is that current law says that if BEPC receives an application for a TIF district that would otherwise qualify for approval but would exceed that 6 district limit that's in statute, and the legislature is not in session, the e-board can approve a district. So this is striking out that e-board authority to approve a district off session if it would exceed the current 6 district limit. And so this that makes sense with the change of the taking away that 6 district approval limit that's there and having that 14.
this one's gonna take some work.
Comments on the 2 per county. I know it's already in law, but Brian Pine of Burlington, he recently gave some testimony as to all counties are saying proportionally.
Okay, yeah, I think if any of these, we can send back the easy ones, which are the ones we voted out of here 3 or 4 times. The ones that are more problematic and we want to work on, we can hold. And we'll see what the other body does. Okay, but I think we will put the must-haves on the miscellaneous tax. So
Just one question though regarding TIFs and so on. Are there people waiting in line to apply who can't apply based on the current standards?
I've heard at least 2, one, yeah, I guess it's a town. Then I've heard one city but that's just somebody in the hall told me that. Do you have more that are actively interested in?
I know of one city that is interested in applying for TIF district and are working on it for at least a year.
Okay.
And we don't have the ability to do so based on the current limit, is that correct?
That they are able to currently do so.
They are able, so this won't hold them up.
Right, I think we've got, if I'm counting that list, we've got 11. So we've got like 3 slots. Okay. So, I don't know, see if I can find, it'd be easier if we could get childcare settled before I tried to negotiate something else. But I'll see what we can do with this. We're really gonna need to get miscellaneous tax if I can pull it out of here tomorrow. So we'll see. And, okay, so let's keep going. We've got 5 whole minutes.
So the next bit in section 9 on page 16 deals with the TIF rule. So BEPC adopted one rule for TIF districts, and this new language is saying that asking BEPC to sort of update their rule to not permit approval of any substantial change requests that would result in a municipality needing to extend the period to incur debt or retain education property tax increment. So if a BEPC approvals of a substantial change request would sort of have the outcome of needing a TIF district to change those debt incurrence period or the period to retain increment, then that should not be allowed. And so that is asking for a rule update, and then section 10 is related. And this says that VEPSI should adopt this rule by October 1st, 2024. And that doesn't allow for this. And then prior to this rule being amended, VEPSI should not approve any substantial change request that would result in that extension until this rule has been adopted.
Okay,
Aren't they currently allowed to extend once and then it has to come to us?
There's, you can incur debt for 5 years, and then statute allows a municipality to go to VEPSI for a 5-year extension. This is, I think, dealing with a situation like how, if it's beyond that, then a municipality would have to come to the legislature to extend a debt incurrence period.
this might hit
or
the
period
city
for
of Barry, who decides, other than doing parking, which is their original, they might decide they want to build a regional recreation center, which will take time to build and would result in a longer period of time to start paying back. It might impact the city of Burlington, who seems to keep, they're the ones that are operating under a different set of rules, and they have expanded the waterfront district several times, to my knowledge. So that might be something that, because they've been there for over 20 years, I think.
I think it's just trying to address a situation where VEPSI does an approval that essentially requires a municipality to come to the legislature to make a change to allow for that to happen. And
Right.
that approval should not, VEPSI should not do that approval.
All right. We have a task force.
So there are the two remaining issues in this bill are 2 studies. One is an economic development incentive study. I don't know. You wanna chime in on this one, or I can go through it?
Up to you.
Okay. So this is a task force on economic development incentives. I'm in section 11 on page 17. This is a 5-member task force. There's a member from the House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development, and 1 at-large member with experience in business and economic development appointed by the Speaker of the House, and then 1 member of Senate Economic Development and the at-large member with experience in business and economic development that's appointed by the Committee on Committees, and then finally an at-large member appointed by the Speaker and the Senate Committee on Committees. And the task force would be considering and receiving testimony on the purpose and performance of current state-funded economic development incentive programs, as well as models and features of economic development incentive programs from other jurisdictions. This task force, would have administrative, fiscal, and legal assistance of legislative operations, JFO, and Leg Council. And I'm on page 19. The task force can ask JFO to issue an RFP to get a consultant to help or to conduct this work.
Okay. But there's no money.
There was money taken out of the bill in the House, and section 11A is says that this task force the work of the task force is subject to there being an appropriation in FY '24, and I'm actually not sure if at this point there is that.
I'm not either, and that's not ours, so we'll send around Hinsdale is here. But the public infrastructure study is on this. One of these, I think it's the infrastructure. I know there's some concern in joint fiscal that they just it's too much and there is no money. So there's discussion about a smaller, kinder study going on. So if we do this bill, and maybe we'll do this bill and then put other things on miscellaneous tax, just to be sure. Okay, let's just walk quickly through this.
Sure,
Did we
so-
hear, is there a chair?
I haven't, but appropriations is still needed.
Okay. So we're still meeting.
So this is section 12 on page 20. It creates a 16-member study committee to study and make recommendations for new long-term programs or methods to finance infrastructure improvements that will serve a public purpose, incentivize community development, facilitate development of housing, and reverse declining landless values in Vermont municipalities. The membership of the committee includes 2 House members, 2 Senate members, Secretary of Administration, Secretary of Natural Resources, Secretary of Commerce and Community Development. There's also the Commissioner of Taxes, the State Executive Economist, and then there's a member appointed by the League of Cities and Towns, a member appointed by VITA, and 1 member appointed by the bonding. There is also the state treasurer and a member appointed by the Vermont Association of Planning and Development Agencies. And finally, there's a member appointed by vote of the Regional Development Corporations and 1 member appointed by the Vermont Council on Rural Development. This committee is tasked with getting testimony from stakeholders on who have expertise in planning, rural economic development, and successful infrastructure programs in other parts of the country, as well as people with expertise in implementing infrastructure projects and related incentive programs. The committee will consider how to align various state and federal funding sources into one streamlined rural infrastructure assistance program or fund, and look at harmonizing or expanding existing infrastructure improvement programs to ensure the best method for distributing funding. And that would include looking at using a formula-based distribution model, a competitive grant program, or any other process identified by the committee. In subsection D, there's a report requirement. The committee would submit a report by December 15th of this year with findings and recommendations for action concerning program design, use of funding, sources of revenue to fund this program, strategies to combine or leverage existing funding sources for infrastructure improvements. The report would also look at streamlining application processes and selection criteria to ensure funds are targeted at certain geographic communities or regions with pressing needs, as well as outreach, technical assistance, and education methods to raise awareness about the program. The committee would first meet by September 1st of this year and will cease to exist on January 15th, 2024. And this was mentioned, but the committee would have administrative, fiscal, and legal assistance of legislative operations, JFO, and Leg Council. There is.
And we heard this morning that we had to put it in one economic development, was the basic needs budget, that technically the chair or chairs of the committee should be a legislator, because they work for us, and for somebody who is not us giving our employees orders is not comfortable and could be a conflict. So
Right, and this language does have the Speaker of the House and the Pro Tem jointly appointing from the legislative members of the committee a person to
okay,
serve as chair.
okay. Okay,
And the rest of the bill, I think we discussed, are the 2 extensions for Barry and Hartford, and then there's the veggie sunset, which is extended for 1 year. oh, and excuse me, in section 16 on page 26, there was some language added to the bill relating to the open meeting law and notice of executive session. So this language requires that when a public body knows or reasonably anticipates that the public body will hold an executive session during a meeting, that executive session has to be included in the body's agenda.
Okay. Deep breath. I think as belts and suspenders, we have already done the 2 TIF bills and the veggie extension, just because I don't want to kill it without any discussion. So we may leave those on here and also put them on miscellaneous tax. Take a look at some of the TIF things we've done 3 times. I'd like to get them done just because they're standard operating procedure. I need to know more about what we're doing with that 14 active members, because once you're paying into the ed fund, I don't know why we care. You know, if you've still got if you let that final bond and you've still got 10 years to pay on it, as long as you're paying into the ed fund at full freight, I don't know why this
I guess
is.
they're just only concerned that something happens and payments stop.
Yeah, but then it's the full faith and credit of the town, not of the state. Yeah, I mean, we don't, yeah, we don't have any stake in that one, so I'm suspicious this is a way to limit the number of TIFs below what we have now. And I don't know that we're gonna time. I know you do. Veggie, we've got to get a TIF in your county. That's the only way to solve it.
Except for the traffic light.
We gotta go talk to them. The veggie ones, some of, the whole question about the attendance of the auditor, not the auditor, the economist, and who pays for that, and is he willing, I mean, does his schedule allow for that? I'm not sure about.
$1 million threshold will trigger a lot more of those, I would somewhat arguably redundant reviews, but I'd love to hear more from Betsy on that topic.
Yeah, so I've already told them we aren't gonna be able to do the web seat changes because we just don't have time. The TIF ones we've done 3 times before. I think we can with a straight face say, yeah, we have time to do those. We've done. So, but maybe we'll just send all of them in both bills. I'm not sure how cooperative Ways and Means is going to be as the child care bill plays out. So we will see. Okay, I think we'll put miscellaneous tax on for a vote tomorrow. I want to check that with leadership and see what they see as moving parts. If the budget has stalled, we may just sit on it for a day or 2 until we know. Okay. I thought we didn't have anything yesterday, but things will keep popping up. Yes.
If adjournment comes on, let's say Friday,
Yeah.
or maybe Saturday,
Saturday, yeah.
and you start getting into notice calendar, legislative days and so on.
Yes.
If we run out of time, and I know we were talking about doing at least one bill during the veto session. June.
I'm told that is possible, that if we have things in the works, I'm feeling we'll get some answers on that. The reappraisal bill is the one, if we fine tune that study so that we're sure we have all the questions we want, we could get that out this week. It might not make it through all the notices. It might. If it doesn't, it can go through all the notices on the, I think we're scheduled for 3 days back here
Yeah.
in June. It could go through then. Otherwise, it'll be sitting on the calendar next year.
Yeah.
And if we get a chance, we might get some of the veggie and additional TIF stuff done. We might still get that done. So the one must-have bill we have is the miscellaneous tax, because that's got the link up. And it wouldn't be the first time they took it, if it looked like miscellaneous tax was gonna get vetoed, and put it in the budget. But I have seen the problem being miscellaneous tax in the budget got vetoed, not that many years ago. Miscellaneous tax is pretty clean, and I'd like to keep it that way. I don't think we've got any problems with the Barry TIF, or the salt is another one we've passed, and it's stuck on the childcare bill. I think it's supposed to make us love their taxing structure for childcare. Unless somebody objects, that's relevant to the miscellaneous tax, we'll stick that on there too.
That's an important bill to pass.
So that might make the governor love miscellaneous tax, so what can we stick on he won't like?
I don't wanna work on Saturday or next Monday, and know if anyone else does. But I hate the idea of leaving them really haven't finished our work. You know?
Well, it is the biennium. My goal is to clear that board, and we are pretty close. The S bills are ones up there we weren't gonna do. I'm not sure what the H ones were. But,
If we work Saturday, I'll bring donuts. I'm good for that.
we are
You might want to-
our board is pretty clear. I've still got candy, soda, and I'm not sure what military pensions or stuff.
We go into miscellaneous tax.
I don't like military, only firefighters. I won't tell that to my father and 5 uncles and my brother. All right, that's it. Unless we actually do have a chairs meeting. We do? Oh, the cans, I was